said we're going to get into a tangent. And the tangent is about the inyan of Aveda b'simcha. Okay. So the question that we asked, just to remember, so it's always a good idea to remember what we learned. The Gemara Bracha says, Margela, befuma deRava, that there was a statement that was very common in the mouth of Rava, that tachlis chokhmah tshuva ma'asim tevim. Now, I'll translate it loosely, even though this isn't actually what it means based on Rashi, but this is how you would translate it. If you had, that's one of the problems of having to translate. Is sometimes you end up having to translate wrong. But the simple translation would be the ultimate purpose of chokhmah is tshuva ma'asim tevim. Because tachlis is often purpose. In this case, it's not really the ultimate purpose; it's the ultimate expression of chokhmah. Is tshuva and ma'asim tevim. It's not that the tshuva and ma'asim tevim come after the chokhmah, but the tshuva and ma'asim tevim come before the chokhmah, such that the chokhmah is then complete. That's how Rashi learned it. Rashi learned it, tachlis chokhmah, im sheyesh ima tshuva v'ma'asim tevim. There is, with the intellectual endeavor, tshuva. In other words, tshuva happened first, and now I'm learning after that tshuva. In other words, I have to have some appreciation of elokus, have some appreciation of godliness before my learning is going to be as it should be. And the Rebbe asked, what in the world is the connection between those two? Tshuva is one thing, intellect is another thing. Doesn't mean that intellect isn't important, and it doesn't mean that intellect can't bring me to tshuva, and it doesn't mean that tshuva isn't important, but they don't seem to have anything to do with each other. And in order to emphasize that, in the second parak, the second paragraph, the Rebbe started talking about the simple people who are not great intellectuals and also not greatly knowledgeable, right? Because there is a difference between the two. There are lots of people who know a lot of knowledge, but they're not necessarily intellectuals. They don't think that way. They don't act. That's not how they work. Intellectuals work in a certain way. There are other people who don't work that way, even though they know a lot, right? Okay, but these people don't even know a lot. Very simple people. And yet, their tshuva is very serious, their connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is very serious, and the language that the Rebbe used, quoting the previous Rebbe, is Eimim Tehillim b'mar nafshem b'bechi rav, that they say Tehillim with the bitterness of their soul with great crying. Okay, that's what the Rebbe said. Right? Beichim b'mar nafshem. Third line in the second paragraph. As we see, in actuality, again, these people are harder to find in our generation because simplicity is harder to find in our generation because people are, at least on some external level, sophisticated by virtue of these machines that they walk around with and look at all day. As we see that they're saying if Tehillim is with a broken heart. Okay. Amnam. Now that word Amnam, as we said on Thursday, that word Amnam begins a page and a half of another discussion. It has nothing to do with what we were just discussing. The question we asked has been put on the back burner. What's the connection between intellect and tshuva? That's put on the back burner. Why is tshuva necessary for proper intellectual expression? And now the Rebbe is going to explain something extremely important. And it's dafka, this part of the Maimer that the Maimer is known for, right? But it doesn't mean that the answer isn't also an amazing answer, which will be very useful, especially for people who are sitting and learning Torah in Yeshiva all day. Amnam, inyan maridas shebetshuva, the notion of bitterness. The Rebbe does not say depression, chos v'shalom. He says bitterness, which we'll discuss in a second. Inyan marida shebetshuva ein shayich b'dereinu zeh achron. It's not relevant in this last generation. Let's keep reading, then we'll come back to this. Dara de'ikvus of the Mashiach, the generation that's on the heels of Mashiach, meaning our generation. The Rebbe said this in Tafshin Mem Vav, as we said, 1986. Kaven, why? Now the Rebbe is going to give three reasons why our generation is not shaykh to to the Aveda Merirus, of bitterness. Now, we have to understand that Aveda, we have to understand that, what that means in context, which we will in a second, but first let's read a little. Kevin shebedereinu ein lanu kayach le'inyan merirus. We don't have the power, the strength for the notion of merirus, bitterness. Why not? We'll have to figure that out. V'tzrichin, and what is necessary, hischazkus, strengthening, vis edidus yesera, and a lot of encouragement. V'lochin, therefore, b'dereinu zeh, in our generation, avedus hatshuva hi misech simcha dafka. In our generation, aveda is misech simcha, joy. The ikar aveda is joy, not merirus. Now, in what context is the Rebbe saying this? Where did this merirus come from? Meaning, we talked about these people who said Tehillim with a broken heart, Peseda, and then all of a sudden the Rebbe says, but in our generation, merirus is not shaykh. Whoever heard of merirus? I mean, why were we talking about merirus exactly? We said mar nafshim, the bitterness of their soul. But what's the true context of merirus? There happen to be two different levels of tshuva. In the Alter Rebbe's Igeres Tshuva, which is the third part of Tanya, that book called Tanya, right? It's really called L'kuti Amarim, right? The first part is Tanya, the second part is Shar Yichud V'Amuna, which is where we are now, and the third part is Igeres Tshuva, the epistle on tshuva. You say Igeres is an epistle, whatever an epistle is. I think it's an Igeres, right? So Igeres Tshuva. The Rebbe talks about tshuva. What does the Rebbe say there? The Alter Rebbe, the author of Tanya. What does he say? That there's two different levels of tshuva. There's tshuva tatah, lower level tshuva, tshuva law, upper level tshuva. What's the difference between them? Tshuva tatah is a broken heart, the bitterness one feels from being far from Hashem. Not depression, bitterness. I feel embittered by virtue of the fact that I'm far from the Eibishter. And I've caused this to myself. So I've done this to myself. Right? And that's called tshuva tatah, lower level tshuva. Tshuva ilah is tshuva misimcha. From the simcha, the joy that one feels as a result of one's ability to become close to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Right? No matter where I am, the Eibishter is waiting for me to come and has his arms open to embrace me as I approach him. It's tshuva ilah. It's dafka rucha barucha, the longing of spirit for spirit, meaning the feeling of closeness to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Now, generally, you would think that lower level tshuva comes before upper level tshuva. That would be more reason. That's why one's called lower level and one's called upper level, right? The first step is the merirus, the bitterness that one feels by virtue of being distant from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And then what does that hopefully cause a person to want to do? Approach a Kadosh Baruch Hu. I don't want to be distant. I want to be close. So then I'm going to do things that will bring me close. Okay, so that's what's explained in Igeres Tshuva, and that's the process. Okay, easy enough. The Rebbe says that process isn't for today. Now, that's quite a thing to say. That something written in Tanya is not relevant to us today because we need a different Aveda than the Alter Rebbe was talking about. And what does the Rebbe say? One of the first reason the Rebbe says, "Ein lanu kayach lezeh." We don't have the strength for it. Why? It's been explained by the teachers of Chassidus in this generation since the Rebbe said this mimer. What's the explanation? What will we do? We'll mess it up. Why will we mess it up? What will we do instead? We'll do exactly the opposite of tshuva. We will express that which is the greatest ammunition in the power of the nefesh habahamis, of the animal soul and the yetzer hara. The greatest ammunition it has is this thing called depression. I'll get depressed because I'm not close to the Eibishter. If I focus on my weakness, if I focus on my faults, rather than be embittered by them and be therefore aroused to fix them, I'll just feel sorry for myself. And I'll beat myself up and I'll tell myself that I'm so low that I have to look up to see down, and that'll lead to absolutely nothing but another piece of chocolate or a bowl of ice cream or who knows what.
You already ate half the tub, you might as well finish the whole thing.
I'm sorry, what?
It's like you already ate half the tub of ice cream, you might as well finish the whole thing.
There you go. You don't even have to start the first half. Okay. So that's an amazing thing. mean I'll beat myself up. There is a proper Aveda in Avedas Hashem called Meridus. It's proper, it's necessary, it's important, and it works. But you and I will mess it up. We won't do that. What's the difference between Meridus and Atzvus? One very, very simple thing. Well, you can explain the difference in two different ways, but it's basically the same difference. If I'm focused on the notion of Meridus, then what am I worried about? I'm upset that my nefesh elokis, that my godly soul is far from God. And I want it to come close. Meaning, I see myself as a goof, a body, a nefesh abamis, an animal soul, and a godly soul. And I'm embittered by virtue of the fact that I've allowed my nefesh abamis and my goof to bring my godly soul to a place where it's far from where it wants to be. And my focus is on my godly soul. Or, alternatively, and it's really very similar idea, just said in a slightly different way, my focus is on a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That I'm very upset that I'm far from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And I want to be close to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, because that's what a Kadosh Baruch Hu wants. What's atzvus? What's depression? Depression is all about one thing and one thing only. And what's that one thing called? Me. Me with a capital M and a capital E. That's all depression is about. I'm completely and totally focused on me. And then I can't get anywhere in Avedas Hashem. Where did the Aveira come from? A person does something against the will of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Why did he do it? What was he thinking about at that moment? What was more important? What was he focused on? Himself or a Kadosh Baruch Hu? Himself, obviously. That's where the Aveira comes from. Do people do that? Yes, that happens to everybody. Okay, there are a few people called Beinanim and other people called Tzaddikim that it doesn't happen to, but the rest of us, it happens to us. Okay, so now what's the response to that? Well, if the response to that is to start feeling sorry for myself and more focused in me, so then all I'm doing is allowing the Aveira to cause more of that which was the source of the Aveira in the first place. My complete and total obsession with self. And now I'm no good, and I'm this, and I'm that, and fill in the blank. So that can't possibly bring me close to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Isn't it push me farther away? And I'll finish the tub of ice cream, or whatever, or I'll put sprinkles on it to make me feel even better. I'll go get sushi. I need sushi because I feel bad. Okay. So the Rebbe is, now what's really interesting is there was a time when people, if they were to focus on a negative aspect of their reality, they wouldn't get depressed. They'd become embittered and therefore could work on it positively to change it. But that doesn't work. And what did the Rebbe say? Therefore, what's necessary today? Hischazkus, strengthening. Vis'oididus in Yeseda, encouragement. 1986, the Rebbe is talking about how to educate yourself. He's also talking about how to educate other people. How do we educate children today? We smash them over the knuckles with a ruler? Doesn't work. Used to work. People were fine, right? I mean, this basic modern notion, which is just a function of the same sickness that the Rebbe is trying to tell us to avoid, that this generation is the most enlightened generation, everybody else was a bunch of knuckle draggers, Neanderthal people walking around without any understanding of reality whatsoever, is of course just absurd. And anybody who would say that is themselves just a moron, right? There were a lot of very, very fine people in the history of humankind. Might they have had certain behavior patterns that we might think today we'd rather not have? Yes, no question. There's also behavior patterns that they had that we should probably emulate. They managed to stay married. They managed to bring up their children. Right? They managed to, take having the need to support their family seriously and get a job and actually take responsibility. Like they were able to do all these things, and they just took that for granted that that's what you're supposed to do. And they were, and then you're talking, not talking, 80 years ago. You're talking for the last 5,000 years. That's how people were. Now, did they own slaves? Some of them? Yeah, some of them owned slaves also. Are we into that? No, we're not into that. Is that good not to be into it? Yes, I think most of us would agree it's probably good that we're not into that. Does the Torah allow us to have slaves? Yes. When did we have slaves? Only in the time of the first temple. That was the only time Jews ever owned slaves. That 400-year period. All of Hilchos Avadim is shaykh to those 400 years.
Also, isn't the slaves that we have much different to slaves when a person
Absolutely, 100%. Now, I don't know what slaves were like in Mississippi either. I'm sure there were slave owners who were extremely good to their slaves. We do know, I'm going to get myself in trouble. I'm on YouTube now. This is a big, I better not let my real name out or they're going to come, protest in front of my house. But there were slaves that went back to their owners after they were freed because they found it difficult to make a living out there in the free market. And this was better than that. There's people who make that choice today. It's called living on a kibbutz. I'm giving up certain freedoms for financial security. That's what a kibbutz is. Okay. Right? That's what it's all about. Why would I want to live in a kibbutz? I don't have my own car. I like my own car. They tell me whether or not, things have changed, right? In the old days of the kibbutz, right? They told you whether or not your children are allowed to live at home or not. Not a lot of kibbutzim, the children weren't allowed to live at home. They had to live in children's houses. If you ever wonder why there's a whole generation of messed up Israelis, so there you go. They tend to be left-wingers. Why? Well, because they grew up in a kibbutz, not in their parents' house, from age 3. Okay, well, that sort of messed them up. It's not a very good thing to do. Nope, bad idea. So they don't do it anymore, to their credit, right? They said, this is a bad idea. This isn't working out. This is not a way to bring up children. Okay. But they made certain decisions based on financial reality that there were other realities also. There was, certain ideology involved, et cetera, but a lot of it was just financial, right? I'm willing to give up certain freedoms in order to have my physical needs met without any worry. I'm not going to have to cook my own food. I'll eat in the cafeteria. Lots of kibbutzim where people still eat in the cafeteria. They don't eat at home. They have a kitchen now at home. You can have a fridge and have a stove. But there's still people who will eat there. They'll go to the cafeteria and eat. You want to eat in the cafeteria with your family? We didn't grow up that way, right? I think it'd be nice to sit at home and burn the chicken, but at least it's my chicken. Okay, so whatever. Different things for different people, right? Everybody, okay. Say that. So slavery, good, bad, obviously we're not into it. We don't think that's a great idea, but what you're saying is absolutely right. Slavery, in our laws of slavery are very, very different than the laws of slavery in Alabama and Mississippi and et cetera that the Democrats fought for so powerfully in those days, right? Okay. Our slave, if you have one pillow, guess who gets it? The slave gets it, not you. He gets the pillow. You better buy 3 so your wife can have one and you can have one and also he can have one. Because if there's only one, he gets it. Okay, so who do you feed first? Slave. Feed him first. Now, in all fairness, you also feed your cow and your goat first. Right? So it's not that the slave is such a great deal. But it is true, he gets fed first. It's interesting, Sugya and Bracha is about whether or not if you've already washed your hands and you said Al Natilis Yadayim, and then you realize that the animals weren't fed, are you allowed to say something first? As a matter of fact, you might have even said Hamaitzi, right? You said Hamaitzi Lechem Mina Aretz, and you haven't eaten the bread yet, and you realize that the goats haven't been fed, so there's a position that we paskin like in Shulchan Aruch, that you can say feed the goats before you eat the bread. It's not called a hefsek because you have to feed the goats before you. It's a 3-way machlekes, Rav Sheshis, and I remember the third. The third happens to be the position we paskin like is that you can even that with Rav Sheshis says you can say take a piece of bread and make a bracha. Right? You said a meitzin, you haven't eaten yet, so I could give you a piece of bread and say make a bracha. That's okay. Rav Sheshis comes and says, I could even say, but if I say pass the salt, then I have to make a new bracha. That's the first position. That's wrong. Rav Sheshis says, no, I can even say pass the salt. And then the third position, I apologize, but I can't say feed the goats. The third position is I can even say feed the goats. And that's how we pass it, which is really interesting. Right? Okay, what's that based on? The fact that we talk about giving food to your animals before we say v'yachalta v'savato.
Who are you talking to? And like, if you, why can't you just get up yourself and feed the goats without having to say feed the goats?
Because I'm in the middle of a meal. Why don't I get up and feed the goats? There's someone whose job it is to feed the goats.
Are you saying if you have like a helper or something?
Yeah, whoever feeds the goats. I might not feed the goats. Right? Might be there's someone walking around. I'm sitting down to eat. A lot easier to go feed the goats as opposed to get up, and that's really I have to get up and walk over there, and it takes me 15 minutes. Right? So I say to someone, feed the goats, whoever I'm saying it to. Okay. So whatever, that educational method seemed to work. I'm glad we don't do it anymore. Interesting enough, today's educational methods are generally more positive. That's what I just said. Right? Generally, when we educate other people, we encourage them to do things as opposed to smash them when they don't. That's generally how we bring up our children. Right? Obviously, we have to discipline children, but we spend a great deal of time looking for reasons to give children positive reinforcement. Right? And you have to know how to give the positive reinforcement, because if you give the positive reinforcement the wrong way, then you're in effect telling the child that he's not always good. Right? If you say when he does what you want that he's a good boy, well, you're also telling him that when he doesn't do what you want, he's not a good boy. That's not true. He's always a good boy. He just doesn't always do the right thing, but he's always a good boy. So don't tell him he's a good boy. Oh, what a good boy. You cleaned up your toys. What does that mean? He's not a good boy if he doesn't. That's not true. He's always a good boy. That's what he is. Well, how does he act? That's something else. So when you're bringing up your own children, be careful when you do this, because it does make a difference. It's not just a bunch of nonsense. Right? Say, what a good cleaner-upper. Good job.
On what they're doing rather than who they are.
What a good sharer. Kid didn't share. Means he's a bad boy? Well, every time he shares, if you say, what a good boy you share, that's what he hears. When he doesn't share, he's not a good boy. He's only a good boy on the condition that he does those things that you think he should do. That's not true. He's a good boy. Existentially. Does he always do what you think he should do? No. Don't expect him to. Right? Are you going to pick your battles? Yeah, you're going to pick your battles. You're not going to notice every single thing that the kid does. You drive him crazy. You're like the KGB, hanging around with cameras, making sure that every time the kid does something that's that's not in line with what you want, you make sure that he knows about it. You drive the kid nuts. Right? Okay, fine. So we don't do that either. Then there are certain things that we certainly call them on, absolutely, 100%. They have to know what the difference between right and wrong. There is a difference. You have to know it. Okay, and you teach it to them. The only people they're going to learn it from is you. Okay, so that certainly has to be taught, but it has to be taught in a certain way, a certain creative way. And the way we do it today is not to smash them over the knuckles when they do something wrong. The way we do it today is a lot of encouragement about the right stuff. And it works. Is anything guaranteed? Nothing's guaranteed. No guarantees in bringing up children. Okay, so now when you're educating yourself, what do? Same thing. Accentuate the positive. You probably say things to yourself about yourself that you would never ever say to another person. Oh, you're such an idiot. Why'd you do that? Yeah, you say that to other people? Why wouldn't you say it to another person? Because you don't think it's going to help, right? So why do you think it's going to help if you say it about yourself? It's not going to help. I'm such a moron. What a fool. Right? Okay, that thought We don't have to say it out loud. If you say it out loud, that's even a little weirder. But okay, sometimes we'll even mumble it to ourselves, right? Okay, so that thought is in no way, shape, or form useful. Right? All it does is depress me. And I know I just made a mistake. The fact that I made a mistake doesn't mean I'm an idiot, a fool, or it just means I'm a human being. Oh, you human being. Oh, okay. So now, how to respond to the mistake? Well, why not learn a lesson from your GPS in your car? When you make a mistake, what does the GPS do? Recalculates. Okay, in life, I was going along and I want to be over there. That's where I'm supposed to go. But I made a mistake and I went there. Okay, so now what? This is called the mitzvah, this is called the aveira. Now what?
You took the more scenic route.
Recalculate.
Well, I have new mitzvahs. Take a left, a left, a left, and a right. And I have 3 new mitzvahs. The mitzvah was to take a right, but I blew it, I took a left. Now I have 3 new mitzvahs. Left, 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 now right. The right I had anyway. I didn't add that one. Okay. Did the GPS say, you moron, you fool, you idiot, you didn't listen to me? No. All it says is recalculating. So when we do something in life that requires fixing, generally, what does that mean? Okay, I have to respond to that and figure out, so now how do I fix the mess I just made? Okay, so fix the mess. I now have a new mission. I thought I was doing one thing. It ended up that I'm doing something else because I messed up the first one. So now I have something else to do. I thought I was painting a picture, but I spilt the paint. So now my job is to clean up the paint. Okay, I'll clean up the paint. Am I going to get around to painting the picture? I don't know. We'll see how much time I have. But in the meantime, I have a job. I have to clean up the paint. Say no. Can I sing a nigun cleaning up the paint? Why not? What happened? It's so terrible. Excuse me. Relative to a Kadosh Baruch, if I do an aveira, so that's a terrible thing. Okay, so how do we respond to that aveira? So the Rebbe says the response to that aveira is not to break my heart. Because if I break my heart, I'm not going to break my heart. I'm going to get depressed that I'm not perfect. And that's going to cause me to sink deeper and deeper into a place far from the Kadosh Baruch. It's really an amazing thing to say. That's the first reason the Rebbe gives. There's going to be 2 more reasons. That's the first reason the Rebbe gives as to why it is that in our generation, and the Rebbe's going to show that even the Alter Rebbe, when he talks about Meriris, it's only for a very short period of time, but even that in our generation is not necessary. Let's see. Lochein b'derenu zeh avedas hatshuva, himisech simcha dafka. Simcha. What's the simcha? Again, the simcha is, no matter where I am, the Eibishter is more than happy that I come see him. I come back. Also relative to the reciting of Tehillim. Meaning, when we say Tehillim, are we saying Tehillim with a leiv nishbar, with a broken heart? Not necessarily. We're saying Tehillim with tremendous joy and the opportunity to praise the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Is everything we're saying incredibly uplifting? No. Sometimes we talk about human frailty in a very real way. Okay, but we can also embrace that. Yes, there's such a thing called human frailty. Yes, humans make mistakes. That's the way God created us. Do we a priori embrace our mistakes? No. Do we a priori try to make mistakes? No. Do we a priori decide that I'm going to be mediocre because, after all, I'm a human and I'm going to make mistakes? No, that's a kappa. Because God knows us very, very well and knows as much as we're prone to mistakes, he still said, love me with all your heart and all your soul. That's what he said. Knows who he's talking to. So that means we can do that. Okay, does that mean I'm going to do that without any mistakes on the way? Probably not. Okay. Oh, that is interesting. This just happened. I didn't understand exactly what I was getting myself into, to be perfectly honest. But now, when you write articles for magazines, you don't write articles for magazines. Someone interviews you and they write the article for the magazine. Because I'm not a writer. There's a professional writer who knows how to write, especially in Hebrew. Right? I mean, my writing in Hebrew is about grade 10 level. So I like a great tenor. So that's so interesting. My vocabulary is not as my otsar milim, which is called the vocabulary. Not quite as good in Hebrew as it is in English. Okay, so I couldn't write a sophisticated article in Hebrew. So and this happens in a lot of things, right? So what happens? Someone interviews you, and then a professional writer writes it up, and they give it to you and say, "Is this what you wanted to say?" And say, "Yeah, that's good. You did a good job, but I will change that." And then fine, it ends up in a magazine. So they asked me to talk about Inyane Chinuch in a magazine. A Lubavitch magazine comes out, I think once a week, once a month, I don't know. It must be once a month. It shows up in my mailbox. So they mentioned this to me. I didn't get what they wanted. I couldn't figure it out until the guy called me up, who actually, so to speak, interviewed me. What did they want? It was a very interesting idea, I thought. We want you to talk about mistakes you've made in your chinuch of students and children. Right? And then how you corrected it. Because generally, if you talk to people about correcting their mistakes, it's very similar to what the Rebbe is saying. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear about mistakes they've made. But if they read an article about someone who himself is talking about the mistakes he might have made and how he corrected those mistakes, then they're more willing to hear that idea. That was the person who was in charge of the project. That was his. Said, so you have to be able to, willing to say that you made mistakes. So I just told them to call my wife. Why are they talking to me? I don't understand. My wife will tell them every mistake I've ever made in 42 years of marriage. She remembers every single one. But, which means she just has a fantastic memory. It doesn't mean that there are only a few of them. But women are like that. They'll remind you of something you said 35 years ago. Well, you once said, I said, come on, I really said that. You know, really? Where were we? She'll tell you what's happening where you were. It's humbling. But hopefully not depressing. Because she likes you. She's still married to the rest. She must like you. Right? Okay. So that was his interesting idea about helping people deal with mistakes. Read an article about someone dealing with their own. Okay. So I had to make up mistakes I made, because I haven't made any mistakes. I mean, I never made a mistake before. So. But it was sort of, I would have, now that I understood, I told him, I said, now that I understand exactly what you want, I would think, more seriously about what examples I'd like to bring. Now I'm just sort of throwing it off the cuff, because I didn't know exactly what they wanted from me. But anyway, now since the interview, I've been thinking about more mistakes. Right? Oh, I could have talked about that one, but whatever. We'll see. I give you the article before they print it, Baruch Hashem, they're kind to you.
We didn't do it yet?
No, we just talked on Thursday. This just happened, this happened on Thursday. They called me before I went away, and I said, it's coming up for Gimel Tammuz, so it'll, write it up. So I assume today, tomorrow they'll send me something, and I'll look at it, and I'll probably add a few things that I've thought about since, and they can write them in there, and it was very interesting. The guy I was talking to also is a very, very interesting guy named Nadav Cohen. Nadav Cohen is an Israeli Baal Tshuva who teaches a lot of Chassidus all over the country, and one of the things he does, that's really excellent, he gives an excellent 7-minute shiur in the daily Tanya in English and Hebrew. He's better in Hebrew than English. I mean, he's a native Hebrew speaker. But my wife listens to him every single day in Hebrew. She listens to 2 shiurim in Tanya every day. She listens to Yossi Paltiel in English, and she listens to Nadav Cohen in Hebrew. And he's very good. And he does the daily Tanya in 5, 6, 7 minutes. He very clear synopsis of everything. He reads it, explains it. It's excellent. And he does it very quickly. So you're sitting there listening to drushas. So you'll listen every day if it's 5, 6, 7 minutes. Right? He's very good. So I had a good time talking to him too. He's an interesting guy. Rabbi doesn't say we shouldn't say Tehillim, right? But what? Shouldn't be with a broken heart. Should be with the joy of expressing this incredible praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though sometimes David HaMelech, a lot of the time, David HaMelech is talking about difficult times in his life. But Baruch Hashem, David HaMelech emerged from all of those times David HaMelech. He emerged from all of those difficulties a stronger person, a better person, an amazing person. Shemavur b'maimer shamiris tehillim. He believed nishbar, that the saying of Tehillim should be with a broken heart. It's well known, the statement of our Rebbeim. Shenimsa, this really comes from the Tzedek. Right? It's a famous story. We'll talk about it in a second. Let's just see what it is. That was given to us by the Frierdiker Rebbe, the leader of our generation. As we said earlier, the Rebbe always refers to his father-in-law as the Nasi Ador, the leader of the generation, even though we relate to the Rebbe as the leader of the generation. Ukfar Nitpas, and not only was this told to us by the previous Rebbe, but it's actually been printed, which means it's for public consumption. It's not just something the Rebbe said in a Farbrengen with his Chassidim. It's something that the Rebbe thinks should be printed and given to anybody who wants to read it. And what was that statement? Very, very famous statement that you've probably heard, but it has to be understood well. Trach good, verzein good. Think good, it'll be good. The yesod, the foundation of the whole notion of bitochen, right, of trust. There are two mitzvahs that have to do with well, they're two separate mitzvahs, but obviously they play off each other. Emunah and bitochen. Emunah is I believe in the Eibishter, and that means I believe in the Eibishter as Eibishter. Not that I think the Eibishter is the guy who created the world, but that he has certain faults. No. Emunah in the Eibishter means I believe in a being that is beyond anything I can imagine, and perfect, and knows everything, and is absolutely good. Okay. There's other things also. He's one. There's all sorts of things that could be included in the notion of Emunah. Bitochen, that means that, and I also, one of the things I understand about the Eibush is he's kol yochel. He's omnipotent. He can do whatever he wants. It's unlimited. There's nothing he can't do. There's no situation that he can't change. Okay. So that means that if I'm in a difficult situation, based on Emunah, I have Emunah that if a Kadosh Baruch Hu wants, he could change it. It could all end up good. Meaning what good? What you and I call revealed good. What you and I call good. Because if someone is, God forbid, sick and they die, God forbid, so that's also good. It's just a level of good that you and I don't call good. On some level, that's also good, because it came from a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and everything comes from Kadosh Baruch Hu is good. It's just not what you and I call good. What's called Teva Nira V'Nigla, seen and revealed good. That means healthy, that means parnasa, that's called revealed good. Okay. So emun is the understanding that Kadosh Baruch Hu can do whatever he wants, and is completely in charge. Bitachon is the next step, which is extremely difficult. Bitachon is the step, and this is how the Rebbe describes it in a famous Sikha in Parshas Shmeis. Chelik Lamed Aleph L'Kuti Sichas, Lamed Aleph, Lamed Vav. The last two Chalokim, they're both in Lashon HaKodesh, those two. I think it's Lamed Aleph, it might be Lamed Vav. That the Rebbe explains it in a very, very famous Sikha that everybody learns and should learn. You need to be bitachon. What's bitachon? Bitachon is not only can the Eibishter do it, he will. Bitachon is the absolute, complete surety that a Kadosh Baruch Hu will extract me from this, what I'm describing as a negative situation. That which I'm perceiving as a negative situation. Whether it's a health issue, a financial issue, a religious issue, whatever it happens to be. The Eibishter will extract me from that and everything will be good. What brings the good? That absolute bitachon. Trach good, the positive thought, that sein good, will bring the positive reaction. Meaning, if I realize that absolutely everything depends on a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and there is no situation in the world that is too drastic for him to extract me from, no matter how bad it looks, and I have absolute, complete, and the Rebbe explains it at great length in that Sikha, complete and total surety, to such an extent, everything the Rebbe says in that Sikha is based on the Chavos HaLevavis, duties of the heart, of Bach Ibn Pekuda, early Rishon, time before the Rambam, right? That everything, the Eibishter is responsible for this completely and totally. Therefore, the person is absolutely calm without any worry in the world relative to the negative aspect of this. It's pretty hard to do. That person will bring about a positive result. That thought, that state of mind, it's not just one thought, it's a whole state of mind, because if you're dealing with a long-term situation, so then it might take long-term bitochen. And anytime a negative thought seeps in, the person has to get rid of it, go away. There is no, the plan you have if things don't work out the way you want them, so there's an alternative plan. There's no alternative plan. Trach good, v'tzayin good. Everything's fine. Remember once going through an operation relative to something rather serious, and 2 days before I went into the hospital, I saw someone, and he said, did you make a Sudas Haidayah? Did you make a meal of thanks for the miracles that the Kadosh Baruch was going to do for you? Hadn't done them yet. The ones he's going to. So the night before I went to the hospital, I had a friend in our house, thanking Kadosh Baruch for all the miracles he's going to do. It wasn't my idea, so I can tell you about it.
Here's my question though. Well, it's like, how do we know what is good? Meaning, okay, God.
Very good question.
You're in a bad situation, like, you don't have money to pay for your house, then you're praying to Hashem to have this money. What if the money's not actually good for you?
Very good question. Therefore, in those situations, it might be that bitachon is not called for. It might be the proper avodah is emunah. Whatever happens, it's up to the Eibishter. It's good and fine. I'm not pushing any buttons here. When it comes to health, I think most of us would say being alive is better than being dead. Right? Let me finish. Excuse me, let me finish. Right? True. So there's certain things that it's rather obvious that there's a good result and a not so good result. That's pretty straightforward, right? Okay, fine. What about other situations? I've applied for 3 jobs. Job A pays more. If I want job A, trach good, v'tzayin good, you'll get job A. If you do it right, if you have absolute bitachon, and you have to see this, what that means. That means without a shadow of a doubt that this is what's going to happen. And the Rebbe even says, and it's really heavy, that if it doesn't happen, it's simply because your bitachon wasn't great enough. So the Rebbe says, it's very heavy, the sikha. Okay. So if you have absolute bitachon, not a shadow of a doubt that you're going to get that job, you'll get that job. Now, you asked a very good question. How do I know that's the best job for me? Maybe the people who work in that office are horrible people, and it's true, I'm going to make a little more money, but I'm going to be miserable all day. So in that situation, I think probably it would be a more basic bitachon. The Eibishter will find me a job. Which one? I'll leave that to the Eibishter. I'm not going to push that button, because I don't know. Which school am I going to get into? Which is the best for me? I don't know anything about these schools. So which job, which school? Okay, but there are certain things where it's pretty obvious. And interesting enough, the examples that the Rebbe brings in the Sikha, there's a health example, which we're going to see here because the original story was a health story, and the Vedas Hashem. Obviously better to serve God than not. Okay. So the Rebbe doesn't talk about finances. Am I going to make this plane or not make this plane? Maybe the best thing that could ever happen to me is not to make this plane, because maybe, God forbid, it's going to crash and the Eibishter is trying to save me from the crane. I don't know. Those things I'm not sure. What if I'm doing a mitzvah by getting on that plane? There's a mitzvah that if I don't get on that plane, I'm not going to get to do that mitzvah. Maybe in that situation I'll say, you know what, trach good, v'tzayin good, I really hope I make that plane. Okay, or that plane's delayed so that I'll get on it. Whatever. Okay. Depends on the situation. You're 100% right. That's why the Rebbe says something very fascinating in the Sikha. It's a mitzvah, it's an aveda bifnei atzmei. It's not a general state. People generally think of bitachon as some sort of general state. A person has a lot of bitachon. That's like saying a person has a lot of tefillin. Bitachon is a response to particular situations, and it might be that the response to this situation is not bitachon. Emunah. There were the Second World War. difficult times for the Jews. Okay. There were Gedolei Yisrael who could have extracted themselves from that situation with bitachon. We know of those who did, but chose not to. So I'm going to be here. I'm here with my Chassidim, my Talmidim, whoever, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. There were people who got out, got to America, and went back to Europe to be with their Talmidim. Okay. But interesting enough, two Lubavitcher Rebbes got out, the Ger Rebbe got out, the Babov Rebbe got out, the Belzer Rebbe got out, the Vishnitzer Rebbe got out. Why did they get out? I guess because they decided they had to get out. The Alexander Rebbe didn't get out. Died with his Chassidim in Poland, 200,000 of them. Probably never even heard of Alexander. Well, there were a couple 100,000 Alexander Chassidim before the war. But they lived in Poland. 3 million Yidden were killed in Poland. Right? A lot of them Chassidim. 250,000 Ger Chassidim were killed. But the Rebbe got out. So Ger today, flourishing. Bells, right next to Bells. This building used to be owned by Bells. You're next to the Yeshiva. The Rebbe got out. Miraculously. Why is there a Lubavitch today? The Friedrich Rebbe got out, and he got his daughter and son-in-law out. We talked about it last week. All right. So there's a Lubavitch today. What happened to Alexander? So there's a couple of Alexander Chassidim around. There's a Rebbe, and I don't know where he is exactly now. But there's a Hust. Hust was a big Chassidus in Poland. How many Hust Chassidim? There's a Rebbe. But they're small. The ones who, the Chassidim you all know about, are Chassidim where the Rebbe got out. So the Chassidus continued to flourish after the war. How'd they get out? Who knows? Those people who didn't get out because they didn't have bitachon? Well, yes, but we're asking a level of bitachon that is something rather superhuman, so I don't think it's an indictment of anybody to say that they didn't have that level of bitachon. Anybody would think that is rather silly. Right? Who are we to talk about these people? These are the holiest people around, people who didn't make it.
They're saying they chose not to.
So I said that about tzaddikim. I didn't say that about the 6 million. The tzaddikim, a select few, not the 6 million. 6 million didn't choose. 6 million just might have not been able to come to that point of clarity in that situation to completely and totally overcome any obstacle. Bluzhev tells crazy stories about getting out. He got out. At one point he was standing next to a ravine with a bunch of Yidden, a bunch of Nazi worms standing in front of them with rifles. And the Nazis said before they shot, anybody who wants to jump over the ravine can jump over the ravine and run into the forest. Now you can't jump over the ravine, it's not there's no right, you're not going to. So the Bluzhev was probably 40 at the time. So he turned around, he jumped over the ravine. When he got to the other side, he noticed there was a 20-year-old young man next to him. So the young man asked him, "Old man, how did you get here?" It's a story he told, it's written. He said, I jumped. I said, "How did you get across?" So he said, "I held on to my father and he pulled me across." Father was in Gan Eden. So the Bluzhev said. And the Bluzhev asked him, "How did you get across?" He said, "I held on to you." He jumped with this kid on his back. And he got across. And he died in Borough Park at the age of about 95. You can do that. Those other Yidden there were holy, holy Jews. They ended up in the ravine. Could they theoretically have jumped across? Theoretically, but most of us aren't holy. Does that mean we're lowlives and thieves? No. Not in the least. Those people are the holiest things imaginable. A friend of mine was sitting shiva for his mother, who Margela sent to the gas chambers 3 times, and she came out alive. She was a 15-year-old girl during the war. 3 times Margela sent her to the gas chambers. 3rd time he saw her walking around the camp, he said, "What are you doing alive?" Made sure she walked in. It didn't work. All sorts of amazing stories about this lady. Anyway, so when she passed away, so my friend was sitting shiva, and a gabbai came from the Pittsburgher Rebbe who lives in Ashdod, and don't ask me why the Pittsburgher Rebbe lives in Ashdod and why there's a Pittsburgher Rebbe, I'm not sure, but anyway, the Pittsburgher Rebbe lives in Ashdod. So his gabbai came to be Menachem Avo, and he told an amazing story. So that once the Rebbe asked him, since the Gabbai speaks perfect English, if he would come to America with him to help him raise money for the Mysticism that they have here in Eretz Yisrael. So he said yes, but he wanted on condition that he should be next to the Rebbe in Gan Eden. That's sort of chutzpah, but okay. That's what he said. The Rebbe thought, said no. I said, why not? So the Rebbe said, this is the story this guy told at the Shiva for a woman who made it through the camps. He said, the Rebbe said to him, Pittsburgh Rebbe said, I was in the camps. For those of us who were there's a special place in Gan Eden that no one else can come to. You weren't there, you can't be there with me. So those people are holy people. Okay. Some of them got out, some of them didn't. How? Good. So in that situation, you would certainly say, better to get out than to stay in. Though those ones who stayed in, the tzaddikim, who decided, what was their decision? What's my aveda? Bitachon or mesiras nefesh? Bitachon or self-sacrifice? Which did they choose? Self-sacrifice. Okay, it's an aveda. Emunah, both of those are based on emunah. If you don't believe in the Kadosh Baruch Hu, you're not going to express self-sacrifice, and you don't believe in the Kadosh Baruch Hu, there's no such thing as bitachon. They're both emunah. Emunah is just a state of being. A person who believes in the Eibishter, a person who lives Elokus. Okay. The Eibishter is not, some ATM machine. There's an Eibishter, and your whole being is an expression of his being, and you have no independent being. Okay, so that's called emunah. Now, how do I express that? Well, a person can express that with mesiras nefesh. A person can express that with bitachon. Hainu. So interesting enough, let's just go a little further. Interesting enough, so the Rebbe says here that our avodah should be trakut v'tzayin good. In other words, positive thought about our ability to serve God properly. Hainu shamachshava b'eifin shel tov hi atzma mevia ima es hatov. That's what that means. That the positive thought brings with it the good. The Eibishter gave every single one of us the ability to be in control of what happens to us to a certain degree through bitachon, which is really astounding. Therefore, there doesn't have to be any notion of bitterness, the Rebbe says. Amiris tehillim, saying tehillim, b'chiyah b'mar nafshay, and crying in the bitterness of his soul, Nesina stuck and giving stuck. Now, obviously, the Rebbe doesn't think that this means you don't say tehillim, you don't give stuck. That means that that's not done with bitterness; it's done with joy. Because the positive thought itself will bring with it tov, vet zayin good, trach good. Trach means think good. Trach, think in Yiddish. Trach good, think positively. Vet zayin good. Vet zayin is it will be, future tense. Good. Direct relationship between those two things, which is based on a lot of emunah. Can't possibly have bitachon if you don't believe in the Eibishter. If you don't believe in the Eibishter, so then otherwise, there's forces in some force, whatever it's called, forces of nature, whatever it happens to be, that are immutable, and I can't overcome them. No, there's an Eibishter. Everything that happens is because the Eibishter wants it to happen. So if the Eibishter, who might have chas v'shalom given this person this disease, if he wants to take it away, he'll take it away. Never to be seen again. Possible? Of course it's possible. It's going to happen? Well, interesting enough, it seems to be up to the person, which is really quite amazing. And the Rebbe explains in the Sikha, though, without any doubt, very hard. Right? In other words, the doctor coming in and saying, we have good news, is not the reason for bitachon. That's not bitachon. The reason the doctor's coming in to say we have good news is because of the bitachon. Hopefully. I mean, it doesn't have to be. Sometimes I'll be teva, the doctor comes in with good news. Mm-hmm. But especially with certain medical conditions, so doctors love statistics. The first thing they'll tell you, 27% of people with your condition don't make it, but you should know that 73% do. Okay, good. They love saying those sort of things. Well, that's basically irrelevant, because either 100% you live or 100% you die. Right? When the Rebbe had his heart attack, right, what they tell the Rebbe is a 25% chance of it happening again. So the Rebbe didn't respond. So the doctor said, did the Rebbe hear what we said? What was the Rebbe's answer? Yes, you said I have a 75% chance of this never happening again. That's what the Rebbe answered. Okay, it's all a matter of how you look at it. Now this is, we'll just finish this line, then we'll stop. We'll pick up tomorrow morning. Here you see the Rebbe as chassid. And since we have a promise of our Rebbeim, that when the thought is good, that zayin good, it'll be good. It's absolutely clear that that's the way it'll be. If the Rebbeim said it, it's true. That's the Rebbe as chassid. The Rebbe also teaches us how to be a chassid. Mela, the Rebbe is a Rebbe and teaches us all sorts of things about how to serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu. But the Rebbe also teaches us what it means to be a chassid, because the Rebbe is a chassid, the previous Rebbe, and the Rebbe just told you what a chassid is. A chassid is someone, as Rebbe said something, that's the way it is. The Rebbeim know, and I don't, and if they say it, then it's true. It might be that my experience is not exactly that way. Okay, that's my issue, not theirs. Truth is what it is. What I experience, okay, so maybe I experience something else, so I have to work on myself not to experience that. Truth is truth. Truth is what the Torah says. Okay. So if the Rebbeim say something, that's what the Rebbe says. If the Rebbeim say something, then that's the way it is. So the Rebbeim said, now the story of the Tzemach Tzedek, which we'll see tomorrow, the Rebbe, he's not going to tell us the story, he's just going to say, and especially since this was. The story was that someone came to the Tzemach Tzedek and said that someone was ill, and they wanted a bracha. The Tzemach Tzedek said, Trach good v'tzangut. That was his response. Think good and it'll be good. Now, it's really interesting. It seems that Tzemach Tzedek said it to people who weren't sick, rather to the loved ones of the person who was sick. We generally relate to it as the avodah of the one who has the illness. Right. But what if that person's unconscious? So then it's sort of hard for them to do that, right? The Tzemach Tzedek seems to have said it to the loved ones. The mysteries of creation, which we don't always understand. Actually, sometimes we do. I guess that's the chiddush. Not so much that we don't, but sometimes we actually do, because the Torah tells us. So, okay, we'll stop there. We will pick up tomorrow. We'll cover a little more ground tomorrow inside. You should have an amazing day. What's your name? I don't know your name.
Yes, I'm the new guy.
You're the new guy.
Yeah.